2015, I did a thing. I did something that scared me, something that excited me, something that was unknown to me. In 2015, I published a book. That book was called Wrapped in Skin. And from that day, it has changed my life consistently. Almost daily, it has affected me. And my hope is that everyone who's picked the book up from that time has had some impact, been impacted in some way by the words on those pages. This is an opportunity for us to unpack those concepts, to really dive deep. You'll get a front row seat to hear me talk to people about what it is to live a life of purpose. What is existence? What is life itself? Why are we here? You'll get to ask your questions, have comments heard and talked about on the show. And maybe at some point, some of you will have an opportunity to come on and talk about your own personal experience and your own life's journey. My name is Justin Jamar Grooms, and I want to welcome you to Wrapped, the podcast. What's up, good people? Justin Jamar, another episode of the Wrapped in Skin podcast. As always, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day, whether it's in the morning time, on your way to work, or at night, getting off from work, dealing with the day, wherever, whenever you're listening to this. I really appreciate you. Like, I truly do. I know a lot of people say that, but I realize that, you can be doing anything with your time. This next 25 minutes or 20 minutes or so, however long this turns out to be, you could be doing a lot of things with it, but you have chosen to take some time and share this space with me. And I really appreciate that. A lot of you have been listening for quite some time, and you know that mostly this has been a solo podcast. And, for the past few episodes, we've been doing some interviews, and which have been great. I really enjoy talking to people and finding out what they're going through with their stories and giving them an opportunity to not only talk about things that they've gone through, but also share some insight and wisdom with those of you who listen. As much as I like that, I also like getting back to the roots, which is me just kind of coming on and having a stream of consciousness and talking about what God has given me to talk about. And this is one of those episodes. So I've got some things in my mind I want to talk about, I want to discuss. As always, this is not a podcast for you to have to agree with or disagree with or believe 100% of what I say or any of what I say for that matter. It's for you to listen, take from it what you will, leave the rest. And then hopefully if you are impacted in some way by it, that you decide to share it with someone that you know who also may need it, also may have the opportunity to be impacted by it. That is ultimately my goal. So a lot of things been on my mind lately. And today I want to talk about just some of those things conceptually. And the first question I have, I've often asked myself this question, but first question I have for you is, how many of us believe that we really deserve the best out of life? I truly believe it. How many of us actually wake up every day with an expectation of happiness, an expectation to be fulfilled, to live well, to be complete? Ask yourself right now as you're listening to this, how many days this week have I actually woken up and started my day with those expectations? It's my belief that the intelligent, creative energy that created all of us had that level of expectation in mind when we were just a thought that would eventually be produced into this particular iteration of space and time. That same divine creator also gave us something along the way called choice, or what some people call free will. It can be a terrifying thing to have choice, to have free will. Each day you wake up with the opportunity, or some of us look at it as a burden. If we look through it with a certain lens, choice can actually be a burden, depending on your perspective. And we face choices in all areas. Things like what to wear, what to eat, where to go, how to get there, what to do, and who to do it with. And we then ultimately face the outcomes of those decisions. When they turn out to be good decisions, we give ourselves a pat on the back and the occasional shout out to God. When the choices turn out bad, we find ways to shift blame and question God about those outcomes. The funny thing is that in both instances, we often leave God out of the decision-making process altogether and only take to him the outcomes. So we make the decision on our own and then go to God with the outcome, asking, why, God? Why have you allowed my life to turn out this way? Why did I lose the job? Why did that relationship end? The question we should really be asking is, did I ask God before I made the choice? Did I allow this divine intelligence to have a say-so in the decision? I propose that most of our choices in life have less to do with our nature, which is the God in us, and more to do with our nurture, which is the environment around us. We tend to make decisions based primarily on what we've been taught or indoctrinated into. We mimic the choices and actions of the people we spent most of our time with. Then when those mimicked choices lead us down a path which we don't like, we make statements like, it's just not meant to be. But people like me never catch a break. Or here's one that's ruined a lot of lives. It just runs in my family. I believe, I really want to drive this point home. I've said this on probably 5 or 6 episodes. This is a note-taking episode, all right? And this is the first place you should probably take a note. I believe that we only ever achieve to the level of that which we believe we deserve. We only ever achieve to the level of that which we believe we deserve. If your self-worth and your self-belief is predicated only on that which you can see, the vast majority of you listening to my voice right now will be relegated to mediocre and unfulfilled lives. And that's just the reality of it. It's easy to believe for something that has been seen or done before, but believing that you can be and become something that has not been seen or done before in your bloodline or maybe even in your generation, that takes a transcendent belief, a steadfast and unwavering faith. This is something that really hit me recently. The highest form of knowing is knowing that you do not know. So what does that mean? The highest form of knowing is knowing that you do not know. It means wiping the slate clean of what you've been taught, the intrinsic belief systems which have more than likely put a cap on your potential. Unlearning all of that old doctrine that does not serve you and honestly probably never did. It's about creating the life which you believe you deserve, according only to the creative energy that lives inside of you. I mean, too many of us wake up every day and kind of just haphazardly move through our day, unaware that we have the ability from start to finish to create our life. Each day we get to begin again with each sunrise. The universe welcomes us to create. The expectation that something phenomenal is going to happen should be your awakening mindset. Ask yourself throughout the day, do you ever just take a subtle pause and check in with yourself to make sure that you're vibrating on a high frequency? that you're vibrating on the frequency of abundance and expectation. Because collectively, the current version of this planet is vibrating on a very low frequency. I mean, I think most of us know that. We're constantly inundated by 24-hour news cycles discussing wars and rumors of wars, pestilence, sickness, tragedy, all sorts of calamity. We're in a garden that has been overtaken by weeds. But occasionally there's a flower that remains strong and bright and vibrant and unable to be choked out by the weeds around it. It somehow continues to grow and shine through the thicket. This is a representation of a person who is choosing to create their life in the midst of what they see around them, choosing not to blend in with the weeds or allow the weeds to choke the life force out of it. We all must ask ourselves, are we the weeds or are we the flowers? Because again, we have the power to choose, the power to create, and we've been given that power freely from the same creative energy that created you and me. We have unlimited access to that power. Most of us have been disconnected from it for so long that we sometimes assume that it doesn't even exist. And if it does exist, we don't believe we have the ability to reconnect to it. But that power is still flowing. And it won't refuse its power to those seeking to plug back in. The amazing thing about that power is that when you plug into it, you don't really need to do anything else other than allow it to flow. It will deploy its energy wherever you choose to touch. Here's the caveat, and I think this is a game changer for a lot of people if you really get this. You cannot hold on to or hoard the power for yourself. It's free flowing. You are not called to be a reservoir for the power, but instead a conduit so that you can connect to the power and then help other people connect to the power. I used to ask myself literally almost daily why I felt the need and the desire to share my thoughts and insight with people, like mostly complete strangers. Why I had this rigorous desire and passion for communication. And God showed me that I'm a conduit, that each time I plug into my source, I'm not designed to hold on to it. Anyone who really knows me can attest to the fact that I've been communicating this way for most of my life. And to be honest, for most of that time, I wrestled with God about it. I wrestled with him about the why, the what, the how. Occasionally along the way, he's given me revelation, into one or more of those questions. He's shown me sometimes the why and the how and the what. But for the most part, those questions remain largely unanswered. Occasionally, someone will take the time to let me know that something I said has impacted them, but that quote unquote impact will likely remain largely unmeasured my entire life. But if I'm being honest, it's in those small moments where I can see the needle move that I'm appreciative of the opportunity to share and to talk and communicate. I run a social purpose organization called Passionate Work. Some of you may have heard me talk about it before. And the program is designed to help kids uncover their areas of gifting and then subsequently connect those gifts to viable career options, with the sole purpose of giving them the opportunity to not feel the need to choose between their career or their job and their calling, but instead to be able to live lives where those two things can become one and the same. So early on in the life of the program, I met this young girl. She must have been 14 or 15, and she had expressed her interest in the program. So I asked her, whether she wanted to go to college, and if she was going to go to college, what she'd planned to study. And she said she wanted to be major in English literature, become an English teacher. I said to her, teaching is, I'm a fan of teachers. I said, teaching is an honorable profession, and we need more good teachers. And then I said, I assume you must be really good in English if you want to teach. And she said, yeah, I like English all right, but I'm really more into art. And my next question was, well, why not study art instead of English? She said, my mother's an English teacher, and she told me she could help me get a job with her with the school district when I graduated. I said, but do you want to teach? And she didn't answer, but I could see in her expression that she had no real interest in teaching. So I pressed more. I asked, well, what other subject are you interested in? She said, well, I'm really good at math. And so the next question was, well, why don't you teach math? She's like, well, I think it might be too tough to teach math. So now she had told me that she was interested in math and that she liked to draw. And I said, have you heard of something called architecture? She said, I think, literally said, aren't they men who design buildings? And notice she said men who design buildings. And that wasn't lost on me. And I said, yeah, sure. There are people who design and create all sorts of structures, from the library that we're standing in to the Rams Stadium. And in order to be a good architect, you need to really be good at two things: drawing and math. Now, I think that was the first time I'd seen the light bulbs turn on in someone quite like that. In that moment, I knew that I had just witnessed someone being exposed to a new possibility. I was connected to a power source that flowed through me and found its mark in the mind of a 10th grader who had her whole life ahead of her. I was watching this documentary the other night, and it was about a guy who just one day while at work decided he wanted to complete an Ironman, but not just any Ironman. He wanted to complete an Ironman somewhere it had never been attempted before. He wanted to do an Ironman in Antarctica. Now, if you don't know what an Ironman is, it's a 2.5 mile or 2.4 mile open water swim, a 112 mile bike ride, and a full 26.2 mile marathon, all to be completed in consecutive sequence. To accomplish this, he would have to swim through freezing waters, around ice, ride his bike in the snow, and run basically on a giant glacier. Not only had it not been completed before, it had never been attempted before. But this guy just made a decision that he wanted to do it, but more importantly, he made the decision that he could do it and would do it. He ran one triathlon up to that point, and it was in ideal conditions, somewhere in like Hawaii. The power of his choice, despite what he had seen or despite what he had been told, is what propelled him forward to eventually succeeding and accomplishing in that endeavor. Not only did he listen to the voice inside of him, but he also listened to and leaned on people who poured into him and didn't batter him with their fear or their doubts. The question is, who are you listening to? Who are you confiding in? Who are you leaning on? Do they know the power source that you're connected to? And are they also connected to that same power source? You see, your life is predicated on choices. You get to choose. It doesn't mean that things won't happen, things that are outside of your control. But it does mean that when they do happen, you get to choose your reaction to them. You also get to choose the lessons that you take away from them. The power source is sufficient. You are sufficient. And this world is your canvas. So go paint your life. And along the way, as you're painting yours, maybe help someone else find their brush. That's why I always talk about sharing these episodes if something does impact you. Now, the work we do with the students in the Passionate Work program has really changed my life in a profound way. So this is a not so shameless plug, but if you're interested to know more about the program and how to get involved, go check us out at passionatework.org. That's passionatework.org. Love to give you some more information about that program. But ultimately, what I want you to do and what I would ask you to do is, no matter what time of day you're listening to this, if you listen to it at night, do it for tomorrow. If you listen to it in the morning, you still have time today to set an expectation for yourself. and then go about the business throughout the day of rising to the level of that expectation. Don't accept anything less for yourself than what you deserve, and what you deserve is completely up to you, what you can imagine and what you can create in your mind. I say this all the time, and I will continue to say this because I believe it wholeheartedly, that for this time, while you're wrapped in the skin, you will be, if you choose it to be so, the very best of God. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Mean that. Y'all be good. That's a wrap for this episode, pun intended. I want to thank you for joining us. We hope that you learned something about yourself. Hopefully you heard something that you had otherwise never thought of in that way. We welcome your comments. Please share, subscribe, talk about this with your friends. Our goal is to talk next time about something that you want to hear specifically. So comment, message us, email us, let us know what you want to hear, what you want us to talk about, what you thought about this episode. And we'll catch you next time. That'll be good.